The sky tore open like paper. Trail of burning wreckage screamed through the thin atmosphere, crashing down onto the blue plains of an alien world. Metal broke. Fire bloomed. Silence followed. The world quiet, untouched, pristine stared up at the wounded thing it had caught. Then it blinked and waited. From the twisted metal corpse of the crash, something moved. Not machines, not drones. Something alive. They came crawling out of the smoke, bloodied, burned, wrapped in strange furs and scavenged armor. Their tools were crude. Their language was guttural. Their eyes were sharp. Too sharp. They were human. But not the kind the galaxy remembered. It's not the kind the archivists had cataloged as extinct, or the diplomats had once feared. These humans were something else, something old, something wild. A Terran colony ship had gone dark centuries ago. Most believed it lost to the void. Some assumed it had struck a wormhole, fallen into a gravity well, or met the edge of uncharted space. They were wrong. The ship had survived. Barely. Systems had failed, tech had regressed, generations had passed. What emerged now from the wreck were not spacefaring citizens. They were tribal. They were the descendants of survivors. And they remembered, not facts or coordinates, not tech specs or protocols. They remembered the hunt. They remembered the kill. They remembered what it meant to be human before civilization softened their claws. And when they stepped onto alien soil, with bone-carved spears strapped to their backs and fire in their veins, the world itself shivered, because something had arrived, something the stars had forgotten, the terrifying tribe. Orbiting above the alien research vessel Kirillin 3 observed the crash, its crew a mix of scientists, exobiologists, diplomatic liaisons, belonged to the Solari Compact, a coalition of peace-seeking species who had long outlawed war. They saw the flames. The broken ship, the ragged survivors. They saw primitives, injured and lost, and they decided to help. "Prepare the med bays," Captain Rothel said. "We bring them aboard." It is the moral path. No one argued. A fleet of drones descended. Medical bots moved through smoke and ash, scanning heat signatures, locating the humans. They found them huddled near the wreck, sharpening bone knives against ship hull metal, building fires from broken circuit panels. Primitive behavior, predictable, understandable, but when the drones approached, they attacked, fast, precise, silent, spear through one drone's islands, swinging club crushing another. Even the armed sentry unit, a machine designed to defend against minor predators, was pulled down and torn apart by 4 humans, using nothing but sharpened pipes and fire-hardened sticks. "Abort rescue," Rothel ordered, horrified. Pulled the drones back, but it was too late. Humans had followed the retreating drones back to the shuttle. No one saw them enter. The shuttle door had sealed. The retrieval crew inside hadn't even realized what was happening until one of them started screaming. A human, a child, maybe 13 cycles old, had slipped through the closing hatch. Covered in soot, wearing a helmet made from a gutted servitor skull, he moved like a shadow. He took the crew apart in silence. One with a blade, one with a wire, one with just his hands. When the shuttle returned to Kirillin 3, they didn't know he was inside, until it was too late. He released the outer hatch from the inside. The rest of the tribe came storming in. Alarm klaxons wailed across Kirillin 3. Internal sensors showed the impossible dozens of hostile biological signatures moving through the station's corridors, disabling systems, avoiding security nodes, vanishing into ducts. "They're not organized," the security AI said. But it was wrong. The humans were organized, just not like the AI understood. They didn't move in lines. They moved in packs. They didn't communicate with tech. They used whistles, hand signs. Animal mimicry. They weren't invading. They were hunting. By the end of the first hour, 19 crew members were missing. No blood, no bodies. Just silence. And a strange symbol smeared onto the mess hall wall. A red handprint dipped in coolant and ash. The humans had claimed the station. Solari Compact began to panic. Desperate, the aliens tried understanding what they were facing. Xenologists pored over old human records, searching for parallels. "These aren't regular Terrans," one Solari scholar whispered. "Their tech has regressed, but their instincts. They're predators, another said. No, the first corrected. They're apex predators. But worse. Worse than apex? Work together. They learn, and they adapt fast. The humans had never seen zero-G before. But within hours, they were using it, vaulting between walls, ambushing from ceilings, floating silently through maintenance shafts. One crew tried luring them with food. The humans stole the food, then returned later and stole the bait layer too. They never left tracks. Only the soft sound of breath behind you. Only the sudden click of a trap you didn't set. The aliens called them ferals. But it was more than that. These were warriors shaped by centuries of survival without help, without technology, without mercy. And now, they were loose in space. The surveillance drones floated in silence above Sector 8. Heat signatures flickered through the halls, fast and low to the ground. The aliens monitoring from the control chamber watched as one of the primitives paused near a broken bulkhead, sniffed the air, and vanished into a dark maintenance tunnel. No weapons, no translator, no visible tech. Yet 2 patrols had vanished in that sector within the last 3 rotations. Gyrick, lead xenobehavioralist, leaned forward in his chair. They're not wandering, he said. They're hunting, one at a time. Silently, he gestured toward the next screen. A squad of 4 armed Varnak soldiers advanced cautiously through a corridor. Motion sensors lit up, movement behind them. Then beside them, and above. The feed went black. Only one sound was captured. A low growl, not mechanical, not even bestial. Human. They're not apex predators because of their strength, Gyrick muttered. They're apex because of their minds. The station's main AI requested evacuation protocols. Denied. Commander Rylock, already pale, was now nearly translucent. They're just animals with tools. We have energy fields, gravity traps, neural disruptors. Gyrick didn't respond, turned instead to the footage looped behind them, a still image of the largest human among them. A male with matted hair, furs draped over stolen alloy plates, standing over the body of a dismembered Varnak enforcer. Blood not his own on his face. His eyes weren't wild. They were focused. Measured Rylock blinked at the image. What's he doing? Gyrick answered without looking away. He's watching the camera. Rylock paled further. But he shouldn't know what it is. Gyrick stood. He knows exactly what it is. He's letting us see. They tried to trap one. The smallest of the tribe, a female, no taller than a juvenile. Her heat signature had shown her alone in the hydroponics bay. A quick burst of electromagnetic pulse locked the area down. Gravity doubled. Tranquilizer gas flooded the vents. She fell, but not unconscious. The gas hadn't sedated her. It made her furious. By the time the containment team reached the scene, the bay was in ruins. Roots torn from nutrient beds. Broken glass. Blood. The human was Ganand, so were 2 of the 8 operatives. The other 6 were found huddled in the corridor, unharmed, but silent, staring at nothing. Did she speak? Gyrick asked the survivors. They shook their heads. She didn't have to, one whispered. She looked at me, and I knew. She wanted me to leave. I left. You were armed. Didn't matter. Gyrick studied the footage. One frame showed her face turned to the camera comm, breathing steadily. A Varnak medic leaned in. That's not normal. No, Gyrick said. That's strategy. Pulled up the next image. The tribe, gathering again. Not in rage, but in formation. They were preparing for war. Now, the aliens hid. Doors sealed, lights dimmed. The once grand research station turned into a metal tomb of whispers and shifting shadows. The humans had learned the layout, the systems, the patterns. Security patrols were now ghost stories. Clatter in the vents. A breath behind you, then nothing. One technician tried to flee in a shuttle pod. The docking bay ignited minutes later, not from malfunction. From sabotage? Primitive? The humans hadn't built the ship, true. But they had already learned how to destroy it. Back in the control deck, the Leadership Council sat in silence. A visual display showed Sector 12's complete blackout. Every motion sensor had gone offline, one by one, in a perfect spiral. That wasn't instinct, that was language. They're communicating, Gyrick said. Not with words, not with sounds, but with action, movement, fire, placement of their kills. Kill placements, the commander asked, almost not wanting to hear the answer. Garrick nodded grimly. They leave them in doorways, near food storage, near vents. It's not cruelty, it's a message. Kind of message. Garrick tapped the screen, zooming in on a blood-drawn mark beside the storage lockers. A simple shape, a handprint. Open, fingers wide. Then another beside it smaller, and then a third. Upside down clawed, not human. They're claiming territory, Garrick whispered, and warning others. The aliens lit plasma torches and patrolled in groups of 10. They sang high-frequency deterrent tonesmen to confuse hostile fauna. The humans responded with fire. Whole sections of the habitat wing were set ablaze not wildly but controlled. Smoke was channeled, lights were blacked out, fire didn't spread to where the humans were hiding, spread to where the aliens would run. They were driving them, hurting them, trapping them. What kind of species learns tactical fire use in days? The captain asked aloud. Garrick stared at the fire map. The kind that survived ice ages, megafauna, and extinction. The kind that turned sharpened sticks into hunting strategy before they even learned to speak. He paused. The kind that didn't need words to become gods. It happened on the bridge. During a false breach alarm, while the crew scrambled, the main viewport flickered. A feed from internal cams corrupted, then recompiled. A face appeared. The large male again. Closer this time. He leaned toward the lens. Then he spoke. One word. Hoarse. Deliberate. Not in his language, but theirs. A single word broadcast across every screen. Run. Then static. A silence followed that no one could break, because deep inside they all knew. This wasn't a threat. It was mercy. The station's outer hangars were sealed, not by the crew. By them. The humans had figured out the locking protocols. It's not perfectly, but just enough to sabotage escape. 2 vessels were crushed by internal bulkheads slamming down mid-launch. Third was found disabled, its fuel lines chewed apart by what appeared to be sharpened bone fragments jammed into the soft tubing. Primitive tools used with precision. One even had sinew bindings. Who thinks like this? Rylock shouted. What kind of savage sees a fusion cable and thinks, I'll cut it with bone and wrap it with hide? Garrick only answered with a whisper. Someone who has nothing, and still survives. Now the last Doorbase 7's emergency docking lock was sealed tight. Plasma welds from the inside. Cameras showed 3 humans standing near it. One turned to the lens. Not smiling, not snarling, just watching, as if measuring the time it took for the crew to realize they weren't leaving, not unless the humans allowed it. Garrick had lost sleep. Days of watching the surveillance feeds, days of rewinding movement patterns, sketching out territory claims, tracking behavior through smoke, fire, and blood trails. He didn't see a tribe anymore. He saw a tactical unit. Each human had a role. The large male took point, executed ambushes, and carried the heaviest pieces of scavenged gear. The female with dark eyes and sharp movements coordinated motion. She was seen placing bones in corridors in certain patterns that later became warning signs or wayfinding tools. And the children? Not harmless. Scouts? They were small, fast, and often moved in silence through ducts and vents. They didn't kill. They marked locations, weak points, vents, victims. By the time Garrick mapped their behaviors, a grim truth settled in his gut. They're not escaping. They're colonizing. A signal was sent. An automated burst to the nearby patrol fleet, begging for reinforcements. Only one ship answered. The Drexery Harrow, a war frigate, arrived in orbit within 2 cycles, heavily armed, shielded, and crewed by soldiers who had fought insectoid hyovores. Their commander, a scarred warrior named Orlin, laughed when briefed. Tribal animals? You locked down a research station over cavemen? They're not what they seem, Garrick warned. Do not go inside. Orlin ignored him. 30 of his best boarded the outer access ring and pushed in. 5 hours later, no signal. Watched the feed as the frigate began to pull away engines, already flaring for retreat. One final message came through the emergency channel. It wasn't from the Drexari. It was a video file. Low resolution. The Drexery commander. In a dark hallway. Eyes wide. Blood on his armor. Behind him, one of the humans stepped into view. A large male again. This time, wearing the commander's shoulder plating like a trophy. The last words recorded. You were right then. Static. No more patrols. No more countermeasures. The station was quiet now. Not because the danger had passed, but because it had shifted. The humans weren't hiding anymore. They walked openly through the halls. They sat at food dispensers and learned to trigger the nutrient streams. They touched the walls, studied the machinery, watched how lights blinked when buttons were pressed. Some even began to mimic sounds, the words they'd overheard, repeating tones and patterns like birds learning to sing, and the crew. They remained in sealed control rooms and darkened quarters, praying the locks held. But the humans never tried to breach them. They didn't need to. They were studying, learning. Gyrick finally said what none of them dared voice. They're not invaders. They're inheritors. Night swept across the crater valley like a tide of ink. The alien stars blinked high above, unfamiliar and cold, casting no warmth upon the strange planet below. The trees whispered. The winds howled. But at the center of the clearing there was fire. Tall, bright, wild, not a beacon, not a comfort, a warning. The primitive humans had built it without tools, without schematics, without synthetics or instruction. Stones formed the ring. Carved branches leaned together in a dome. Firewood stacked high and burned with intense, controlled fury. Not random, not chaotic. And around that fire they danced, not in celebration, but in ritual. Eyes dark, faces painted in ash and bloodroot. Spears in hand, muscles taut, they moved in patterns older than memory. A circle of purpose, a storm of intent. The flames reflected in their eyes, and in the eyes of the aliens watching from the ridge. The Usari scout team, armored in biosuits and embedded lenses, stared through magnified visors. Every biological scan they ran returned the same terrifying result. These humans were evolving, fast. The first few days, the humans had been wild, confused, broken from the crash. Now they had culture. Now they had command. And at the center of the dance, standing motionless like a statue carved by war itself, was the largest of them. He wore the hide of a spike lizard over his back, blackened from fire. In one hand, a broken shard of alien steel twisted into a cleaver. In the other, the chipped handle of a Yazari plasma tool, gutted and repurposed as a torch. This man had no name in alien databases. But in the tribe, they called him Rook. He did not speak much. He did not need to. His silence was command, his stare law. And when he raised the torch to the stars, the tribe stopped moving. Their firelight shadows froze. Rook looked to the sky, and then slowly, deliberately, he howled. A long, low sound that made even the Yazari step back from their observation post. It wasn't a cry for help. It wasn't sorrow. It was a declaration. We are here. We are alive. And we are not afraid. The next morning, the Yazari sent in another probe, this one cloaked, silent, built for low-profile extraction. It hovered just above the treetops. Sensors live. It didn't return. Instead, the Yazari command center received only a short, grainy feed. A human child, no older than 10, had found the probe. She didn't run from it. She stared directly into its lens. And then she smiled, with a rock in her hand. The feed cut out after 3 seconds of sharp static and the sound of metal collapsing. The operators blinked at the dark screen. Silence hung thick in the control room. One of them finally spoke. They're not afraid of our technology. No, whispered the commander. They're learning from it. Further inland, a separate alien species, the Jar, collective sent in a diplomatic drone. They'd seen enough of the humans through intercepted feeds. They believed the mistake was in fear. Diplomacy, they said, would calm the wild things. A message of peace. A gift of supplies. Soft hand to tame the flames. The humans did not respond to the gifts. They dismantled the drone. They melted down the alloy case and turned it into spear tips. And one of them wore the drone's glowing eye socket like a necklace. Back at the main encampment, the tribe had grown. Other survivors, previously hidden in the hills and ruins, were drawn by the fire, the signal, the movement. From small clusters of hunter families to lone, half-starved wanderers, they came one by one, and the tribe did not reject them. They taught them the fire rituals, the stone words. the rules of silence and strike. Rook watched them all. He did not speak to many. But those he did, they rose quickly. A woman named Sella, with eyes like amber and a jawline hard as stone, had built a crude sling cannon from vine cords and bone. Another Kez used animal scent glands to track alien patrols through the jungle without error. A young boy, no older than 7, had mapped the stars by dragging charcoal lines across cave walls. And his pattern matched the planet's actual orbital drift. They weren't just surviving, they were adapting. They were becoming something the galaxy didn't understand, not feral, it's not primitive. Something worse, something ancient, above the planet. The orbiting Yazari research vessel debated containment protocols. One scientist spoke up. They're Stone Age bipeds. No language, no tech. We should let the planet devour them. But another older, wiser leaned forward. You don't understand, she said. They don't need tech. She pulled up footage, frame by frame. The humans using heat patterns to herd predators. The building of smoke signals visible from orbit. Child painting alien constellations using pigments made from crushed minerals. They are learning faster than any species we've ever cataloged. The council stared in silence, and then the final image appeared on the screen. Rook, standing at the peak of a crashed alien ship, a plasma torch in one hand, a stone axe in the other. Behind him, dozens of humans stood in rows, painted, silent, ready, and behind them, the fire, still burning, uncontrolled, untamed, but deliberate. Like a banner raised above a battlefield no one else understood, the elder scientist whispered. The fire is their flag. The cave was deep, not just in depth, but in time. Each layer of its stone walls held echoes of storms, floods, volcanic bursts, centuries of silence pressed into bone and ash. Now that silence was broken by movement. Human hands scraped soot across ancient rock, fingers calloused from stone and fire, eyes narrow, purposeful. The boy's name was Tem. He did not speak often, and when he did, it was in clicks and hisses the aliens could not interpret. But here, beneath the ground, in the dark, his hands said everything. He was building something, bone by bone. A framework of predator ribs lined the far wall, carefully aligned, each vertebra placed with reverence, each joint bent with heated sap and stone wedges. The remains of the great horn beast felled weeks ago by Rook's strike team were now being remade not into weapons, but into a signal. The older ones thought he was drawing, but Tem was listening. As the wind passed through the bone tubes, as firelight flickered through rib shadows, a low hum began to form. A resonance, not a sound for humans, a sound for machines, frequency layered in bone and breath. From above, cloaked probes still passed, scanning, watching. But their sensors began to pick up something new, an irregular background signal, pulsing, rhythmic. No match found in the galactic language banks. They dismissed it as static. Until one Yasari drone, designed to mirror movement, suddenly stopped responding, not destroyed, hijacked. Up in the orbital station, confusion spread through command decks like smoke. Drone no, 12 Beta had not crashed. Its signal still pinged, but its path had changed. Slowly, unnaturally, it was flying in circles above the crater fire. Then, without command input, it descended, landed, and shut down. Humans did not approach immediately. They didn't need to. They'd called it. Tem stepped forward hours later, wrapped in fur and ash, with the skull of the horn beast tied to his back. He laid his hand on the drone's hull. It didn't spark, didn't resist. The bone signal had worked. They had spoken in the only language the machines understood. Pattern. The next morning, Ruck gathered his scouts. The mountain passes had shifted. Recent quakes had revealed wreckage in the northern ridge metal, half-buried, alien. It wasn't part of their original crash. It was older, different. They moved fast, silent through the fog, up broken trails, through predator dens and shattered cliffs. What they found was not a ship. It was a pod, buried deep in a chasm, covered in moss and centuries of decay, and inside remains. Not human. Tall. Slender. Eyes hollowed by time. But clutched in its three-fingered grip was a weapon, or rather a seed of one. A core module, now cracked but intact, still humming faintly. Rook didn't touch it, but Sella did. Her fingers traced the runes across its side, and for the first time, her voice cracked the stillness. "It speaks in heat." Rook nodded, then lifted his stone axe and smashed the earth around it, digging the core free. They would not use it like the aliens did. They would learn from it, remake it, shape it. Because humans didn't conquer by overpowering. They conquered by understanding, turning fear into fire. That night, as the fire burned brighter than ever before, and the stolen drone parts were woven into their stone weapons, a shape hovered above the clouds. The aliens watched, studied, panicked. They had mistaken these humans for primitives, forgotten what the old texts once warned of Earth. They are not gods, they are not demons, they are only human. And that is enough to terrify the stars. The night sky over the jungle had changed. Above the thick green canopy, where ash clouds once glowed with lightning and broken stars, there now hovered a streak of red fire, burning scar across the heavens. It wasn't a storm, it wasn't a star, it was a warning, and the tribe knew it. They gathered silently beneath the open sky, furs draped over weathered shoulders, weapons gleaming with oil and bone. Their children sat still, not out of fear, but discipline. Their elders did not speak, only nodded. The sky had spoken. The hunters would move. Far above them, in the observation dome of the alien research vessel, Velthrica, the scientists argued. "This is absurd," hissed Dr. Verlac. His frilled chin spasmed in irritation. The firestorm was supposed to break their migration, disrupt their structure, scatter their primitive cohesion. Yet it unified them, said xenopsychologist Era, her voice soft. They move like a coordinated force now, not aimlessly, not instinctively, strategically. She gestured to the holomap between them. Dozens of red dots representing tribe members moved in formation. They weren't chasing prey. They weren't scavenging ruins. They were flanking sensor towers, bypassing detection grids, locating extraction points. "They are learning," she whispered. "Not just surviving, not just adapting, learning." The room fell silent. Then the youngest technician in the back, a quiet, two-eyed apprentice named Kel, spoke for the first time. "They're not primitive," he said, staring at the image of the human leader, the one they had codenamed Grayskin. "They're just old." Grayskin moved through the undergrowth with a silence no technology could match. Around him, the forest breathed. Every leaf, every route, every pulse of nature became a part of him. His eyes scanned the dark, not with fear, but purpose. Behind him, the tribe followed, not in rows, not in disorder, but in position. The twins, spear and bone, flanked wide, left using the mist to cloak their scent. Stone Shoulder and Firewalker kept center line, controlling the rhythm of the march. The youngest, Ashtooth, brought up the rear. He was only 9 moons old. He had killed his first beast already. Grayskin raised one hand. They stopped. Up ahead, across a wide gully, something shimmered. A dome, half buried, glowing faintly blue, humming with energy. Alien. It was one of the extraction outposts. The tribe had seen them before. Watched the metal ones rise into the sky with loud screams and fire. Once, they had tried to speak with the floating people. But the metal ones had only fired beams that turned stone to steam and flesh to ash. Grayskin crouched low and sniffed the wind. "They do not learn," he said, his voice a low growl. "But we do." Inside the outpost, the alien guards were bored. Tall, sleek, and arrogant, they viewed the world beyond their shield as nothing more than a curiosity. "They crawl like insects," said one guard, checking the motion sensors. "Yet we have lost 5 patrols," said another. "Faulty data, swamp gases, local beasts. This planet is a mistake." None of them noticed the tiny distortion on the outer wall. Smear of dirt, a handprint, then silence. The power went out. A moment later, the screams began. The tribe did not leave bodies behind. That was wasteful. They took tools, food, weapons, power cores, even scraps of armor. Grayskin knelt beside the outpost's shattered console. He looked at the alien writing on the panel's lines and symbols he had never been taught. But his fingers moved anyway. He remembered, not from this world, from before. He didn't know the words, but he knew the shapes. His hands followed memory, not logic. His mind opened to something older than language. Behind him, Ashtooth whispered. Why do the stars bleed, Elder? Grayskin looked up at the red fire in the sky, the unnatural glow that had not dimmed for 3 nights. They are afraid, he said simply, and they send fire before they send questions. On the orbiting fleet, panic was brewing. Commander, we've lost Outpost Theta 7 again, sir. They took the power core, General Shiver cursed. His mandibles clicked in frustration. Launch drones, prepare flame lines. No more experiments. No more diplomacy. Burn the jungle. Burn everything. But sir, the everything. The officers obeyed. But far from their cameras, beneath a canopy thicker than steel, the humans watched and waited. They knew how to hide. More importantly, they knew how to teach. The jungle did not scream when it burned. It listened. High above, streaks of blue fire tore through the canopy. Incendiary canisters rained from the heavens, each one designed to sterilize kilometers of terrain in seconds. Alien ships, sleek and cold, hovered like gods with open mouths. But what they didn't understand was this. The jungle wasn't their enemy. The humans were, and the humans were no longer in the jungle. Inside the Veltarka, alarms pulsed like a heartbeat in panic. Command, this is Sector 7. Multiple strikes confirmed, but the targets are gone. They were never there. In the command spire, General Shiver watched as red detonation zones flared across the map. His jaw tightened. He deployed over 100 drones. Millions of credits worth of fuel, tech, and heat seekers. But all they'd killed were trees. No human bodies. No signs. No heat signatures. No blood. Only a message. Carved into the side of one shattered outpost wall beneath the blast marks and soot was a crude symbol. It wasn't alien language. It wasn't words. It was a skull. Primitive, painted in blood and ash, but unmistakable. And below it, the aliens finally translated a crude scrawl scratched into metal. Wrong war, wrong world. Grayskin crouched at the edge of a cliff, watching the sky burn. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He only observed. His people had learned long ago that the best way to win was to never play by their enemy's rules. Fire, let them burn the forest. Air, let them chase ghosts. The tribe had moved far beyond the known scan ranges into the dead zone where the alien machines could no longer reach. The buried ships, the stone canyons, the rusted skeletons of the old ones. A place of memory, a place of truth. Stone Shoulder approached him. They have started their great fire. They think we are running. Grayskin replied, then let them keep thinking. He stood and looked at the stars. He forgot what it means to be hunted. On board the command ship, a single lab technician, Kel, heard finally broken protocol. He'd been analyzing the recovered fragments of the human language from a damaged helmet, comparing it against ancient database entries, deep space relics, and derelict ship logs. And he found something terrifying. Not a word. It's not a weapon. A recording. From Earth, dated thousands of years ago. A primitive camera feed. Faded, jittery, but the voice was clear. An old man, wrapped in leather, stood before a cheering crowd, firelight flickering across painted faces. And he said, "We survived the dark. We tamed fire. We made beasts kneel. And when no more monsters came for us, we made our own." The file ended. Kelroy just stared. That's what terrified him. Not the weapons, not the ambushes, not the jungle. It was the fact that the humans were still waiting for something worthy of hunting them. The fleet was fracturing. Ships were losing contact. Scanners were failing. Ambushes struck supply routes. Traps collapsed entire sensor towers. But no human was ever seen. No corpse recovered. It was like the forest itself was rebelling, guided by ghost hands, led by ancient instincts. General Shiver ordered retreat formations. But it was too late. Because in the shadow of the burnt forest, on the edge of a ridge, the tribe stood fully visible for the first time. Just a dozen figures, wrapped in furs, silent, still. Each holding a weapon, some alien, some ancient, plasma rifles in one hand, stone axes in the other. And when the drone zoomed in, the last transmission the fleet received before everything went dark was this: Grayskin raising his hand and pointing up. They thought the humans were primitive. They were wrong. They thought the humans were hiding. They were wrong again. The humans were waiting. And the war. The real war was just beginning. The fleet never expected the sky to turn against them. Their firebombing campaign Operation Clean Slate had been designed with precision. Total ecosystem denial. No cover, no heat, no food. Nothing would survive. But now, something else was happening. The fires were still burning, but no smoke rose. Sensors picked up zero particulate matter. No ash, no organic decay. The jungle was gone, but it hadn't died. It had disappeared. And the sound every soldier noticed it first. Silence so vast, so unnatural, it made every species aboard the fleet tighten their breathing slits or stop mid-thought. Even space wasn't this quiet. Something was missing from the world. And that's when they realized they had not destroyed the humans. They had awakened the world they had adapted to. Grayskin moved through the blackened fields like a ghost. The jungle had obeyed. Not because it was alive in some magical way, but because humans had become its logic. They had lived in its belly, bled into its soil, whispered their stories into its roots. They didn't fight the planet. They had merged with it. Now, where machines failed to operate, human traps began. From the ruins of ships, they had crafted pulse jammers lined with sap that melted alien circuitry. From alien armor, they had formed mirrors angled across ridges to reflect drones' own signals back at themselves, frying their optic nerves. And now, from the shadows, the hunt began. Not with armies, not with noise, but with patience. One by one, scouts went missing. One by one, cargo haulers vanished from radar. One by one, transmission towers stopped sending updates. It was as if a net made of silence, cunning, and primal rage was closing. General Shiver ordered the fleet to initiate orbital fallback. It was the first time in Velthari military history that a planetary withdrawal was suggested before direct engagement had even occurred. His advisors protested. He silenced them with one simple feed transmitted by an autoprobe that had returned from deep in the black zone. It was footage, a cave, inside, a single human child, no more than 6 or 7, wrapped in layered bark and alien cloth. She stood beside a dead alien predator, one of the apex species the Velthari had long ago catalogued as planetary kings. The beast's neck had been snapped, bare hands, no weapon marks. And the child was smiling, not cruelly, not evilly, just calmly, as if this was normal, as if death had always been her playmate. That image haunted Shiver's command bridge for hours. He issued a full lockdown. Didn't help. By the time the Velthari central ship powered up for atmospheric ejection, it was already compromised. Every access tube was sabotaged. Every coolant line was bleeding mist. Explosions rocked internal bays not large enough to destroy, but precise enough to cripple. And the final blow came not from outside, but from within. A tribal flare launched from inside the ship's vent system, fired straight up through the command deck. It wasn't lethal. It didn't need to be. It was a message. The humans were already on board. They had never needed to break through shields or dock. They had climbed inside the beast, like they had done with every predator that once ruled their Earth. They learned its patterns, waited in its breath, then struck. And now the fleet was no longer a fleet. It was prey. Trapped in a planet it thought it had conquered. A planet where the humans were no longer animals, no longer victims. They were legends, and legends didn't die. They waited. They evolved. They hunted. When the last warship fell from orbit, it didn't burn. It simply vanished, slipping silently into the clouds, as if the planet itself had swallowed it whole. No explosion, no wreckage. Just gone. Command signals from the outer systems begged for updates. None came. Inside the communication silence, the galaxy began to whisper. First rumors, then fear.
Oh.
The rescue mission had turned into a massacre, but no one could point to a single battle. No fleets clashed in orbit. No large-scale engagements were recorded. The humans had not fought in the traditional sense. They had haunted the invaders, one by one, mind by mind, soul by soul. The final signal, pulled from a dying probe buried deep beneath the jungle, played only a short transmission. They don't fear us, they pity us. We gave them fire, and they remembered the stars. Years later, that jungle world was marked as quarantined. Not because of biohazards, not because of war, but because of memory. Too many species had sent scouts. Too many expeditions had vanished. It was like the humans weren't just surviving there. They were changing. Tribes became clans. Clans became networks. Scavenged war tech had become primitive and beautiful merged with stone, bone, and steel. Trees grew around antenna spires. Wild beasts bore armor and followed silent gestures. Human children ran with rifles slung across fur-lined shoulders and knives carved from shipwrecks. They no longer needed civilization. They had built a better one. It's not better by alien standards, but by human ones. One built for instinct, for family, for wonder. For wonder, a world where survival wasn't a curse, was a culture. And at the center of it all stood Grayskin. Older now, wiser. Wrapped in the scars of battles the galaxy would never understand. He stood atop a rusted carrier hull buried in vines and ash. Above him, stars shimmered. Below, the tribe gathered, watching, waiting, listening. And then, without words, he raised both weapons. A stone axe in one hand, a plasma rifle in the other. The tribe howled, not with rage, but with joy. Because the hunt was eternal, and they were human. Across the galaxy, a child of another species asked their elder, "Why don't we go to that jungle world?" The elder paused. Their eyes darkened. They whispered, "Because technology was a mistake."